My name is Eleanor Hayes, and I'm 67 years old. Most people in Iron Creek know me as the quiet widow who rents a small cabin at the edge of town. What they don't know is that for the past 10 years, I've been living paycheck to paycheck on a miner's widow pension, so small it barely covers heat and food. Last month, I stood in the pharmacy line with trembling hands, counting out crumpled bills for my heart medication. When I realized I was short, I swallowed my pride and called my son Caleb. He's 40, a flashy entrepreneur who always talks about changing the world with his tech projects, but never has time for his own mother. "Mom," he sighed into the phone, "I'll send you the $500 this time, but this cannot become a habit. You need to manage your finances better. Kisses." The pharmacist politely looked away, but I felt the sting of humiliation burn hotter than any fever. A mother who raised him through mining strikes, through years of cheap soup and patched-up shoes, and now I was reduced to a beggar in his eyes. That night, alone in my little cabin, I stared at his message until my tears blurred the screen. Caleb believed I couldn't even afford a proper home, and maybe he was right. But what neither he nor anyone else in Iron Creek knew was that fate had already set something in motion. Something so big it would turn my entire life, and Caleb's too, upside down, because the very next morning I got a call that would change everything. The next morning, just as the sun broke over the red cliffs of Iron Creek, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar with a Washington, D.C. area code. "Mrs. Eleanor Hayes?" a man's crisp voice asked. "Yes, this is she. My name is Daniel Keene, attorney for the late General Thomas Hayes." I froze. General Hayes, my older brother. We hadn't spoken in years, not since he moved west and built his empire in the lithium fields of Nevada. Rumor said he was worth hundreds of millions, but to me, he'd always just been Tommy, the boy who taught me how to ride a horse in the dust trails outside our childhood home. "I'm sorry for your loss," I whispered, confused. "But why are you calling me?" "Mrs. Hayes, General Thomas named you as his sole heir. His estate, including his Nevada lithium holdings, investments, and assets, amounts to approximately $120 million. For a moment, I thought my weak heart had finally given out. The world tilted, and I sat down hard on my worn-out kitchen chair, gripping the table for balance. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? $120 million, Mrs. Hayes, along with full ownership of the Iron Creek lithium mine, 3 properties in Nevada, and several international investment accounts. You are the only beneficiary." I pressed the phone to my ear, staring at the message my son Caleb had sent just the night before. "Mom, don't make a habit of this. Manage your finances better." Manage my finances better. Suddenly, I had more finances than Caleb or anyone in Iron Creek could even dream of. Attorney Keene cleared his throat. "We'll need to meet in person soon to finalize documents, but for now, Mrs. Hayes, I suggest you take a deep breath. Your life is about to change." And for the first time in decades, I laughed. Not the polite laugh of a poor widow trying to hide her shame, but a deep, liberating laugh. Caleb thought his mother couldn't even afford a home. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. 3 nights later, I put on my best dress, the same navy one I'd altered twice over the years to keep it presentable, and walked into the glittering atrium of the Iron Creek Tech Hub, where my son was hosting his launch party. Caleb stood at the center of the room, dazzling in a tailored suit, flashing smiles for investors and reporters. He spotted me at the door, his smile faltering for just a second before he plastered it back on. "Mom, you came," he said, kissing my cheek in front of his guests. "This means a lot." His tone was syrupy, but his eyes were sharp, warning me not to embarrass him. I handed him a small box wrapped neatly in old floral paper. Inside was his father's pocket watch, polished until it gleamed. "Your father always said this watch marked new beginnings," I whispered. Caleb chuckled, but it wasn't warm. He lifted the box so his circle of investors could see. "Look, everyone, my mom brought me a family heirloom, very vintage." The group laughed politely, not knowing whether to clap or cringe. One slick-haired investor leaned closer. "Mrs. Hayes, what do you think about Caleb's plans to expand into real estate development? Bold move, right?" All eyes turned to me. I smiled softly. "Real estate is always interesting. I've been considering some investments myself." The laughter was instant, sharp as glass. Caleb raised his voice over it, grinning like he was in on the joke. "Oh, Mom, let's not confuse people. You can't even afford a proper house, remember?" The words cut deeper than any blade. The group erupted again, polite chuckles, nervous smirks, but every sound drilled into me. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, the humiliation burning in front of strangers who didn't even know me. I straightened my back, forcing my voice steady. "You're right, Caleb," I said quietly, my eyes never leaving his. "I can't even afford a house." He smirked, thinking he'd won. But in that moment, something inside me hardened. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was clear. And as I left that glittering hall of empty promises, I already knew my next move. To buy something so grand, so untouchable, that Caleb's laughter would haunt him for the rest of his life. 2 mornings after the party, I sat in Attorney Keene's polished office in Carson City. Sunlight glinted off the steel and glass skyline, but my eyes were fixed on a single folder sitting on his desk. "Mrs. Hayes," he said carefully, "I assume you've thought about what you want to do with your inheritance." I leaned back, my old hands folded neatly in my lap. "Yes, I want to buy a building." Keene raised an eyebrow. "Any building in particular?" I slid a newspaper clipping across the table. It was a glossy ad for Iron Creek Tower, the tallest, most modern skyscraper in our little town. And the same building my son Caleb rented 3 floors from for his tech company. Keene smiled slowly, understanding more than I said. "The tower is valued at $18 million. Do you wish to negotiate financing?" "No," I said firmly. "Cash offer, full price. I want the deed signed this week." For a moment, even the seasoned attorney blinked. "That will make you the landlord of Hayes Innovations, your son's company." I met his eyes without hesitation. "Precisely." That afternoon, in a conference room high above the Nevada desert, I signed my name on a stack of papers. With each stroke of the pen, the humiliation from Caleb's party bled away, replaced by a steady, quiet fire. When the final signature dried, Keene handed me a set of heavy brass keys. "Congratulations, Mrs. Hayes. You now own Iron Creek Tower." I weighed the keys in my palm. They weren't just metal, they were power. Walking out into the sunlight, I allowed myself the faintest smile. Caleb had laughed that I couldn't even afford a house. He'd soon learn the truth. Not only could I afford one, I now owned the very roof over his head. And the beauty of it, he wouldn't even know until the rent notice arrived. It didn't take long for the news to reach them. Word travels fast in a town like Iron Creek, especially when someone buys a tower in cash. 3 days after the deal closed, there was a knock at my cabin door. When I opened it, Caleb stood there with his wife, Vanessa Blake Hayes, immaculately dressed as always, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Mom," Caleb began, wrapping me in an embrace that felt staged. "We were just in the neighborhood." I arched an eyebrow. 3 miles outside town is hardly in the neighborhood. We sat in my small kitchen. Vanessa's eyes swept over the chipped counters and old curtains with thinly veiled distaste before she leaned forward, her manicured hands folded on the table. "Eleanor," she began, using my first name like I was a client, not her mother-in-law. "We've heard things about some sudden changes in your finances." Caleb jumped in quickly as if to soften the blow. "Mom, we just want to make sure you're okay. Handling money, serious money, is complicated. Vanessa works with high-value estates every day. We could help guide you." I stirred my tea, letting their words hang in the air. Guide me or control me? Vanessa chuckled, too smooth. Of course not. But at your age, mistakes can be catastrophic. One wrong decision, one bad signature, and millions could vanish. Caleb reached across the table, his tone dripping with false concern. Mom, let us manage things for you. Just until you're comfortable, you don't need the stress. I looked at my son, really looked at him. The boy I'd once held when he was feverish, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, now sitting in my kitchen, talking to me like I was some confused old woman. I set my cup down carefully. Thank you for your concern, but I can handle myself. The smile on Vanessa's face twitched just for a second. Caleb forced a laugh, standing up too quickly. Of course, Mom. We just want what's best for you. As they left, Vanessa's perfume lingered in the air like poison. I watched their car disappear down the dusty road, my gut twisting with certainty. This wasn't just concern. This was calculation. And something told me their next visit wouldn't be so polite. A week later, I got a phone call from an old friend, Judge Whittaker's secretary, a woman I'd known since church choir days. Her voice was low, urgent. Eleanor, you need to know something. A petition's been filed at the county courthouse. It's about you. My heart skipped. What kind of petition? She hesitated. For conservatorship, to declare you incompetent to manage your own finances. Filed by your son, Caleb, and his wife, Vanessa. The teacup slipped from my hand, shattering against the floor. For a long moment, I just stared at the shards glittering on the linoleum. My own son had put this into motion. According to the documents she whispered about, they were claiming I'd been making irrational purchases, showing confusion about financial matters, and expressing paranoid fears of exploitation. In other words, twisting every cautious step I'd taken into proof I'd lost my mind. And then came the cruelest part. They wanted me placed under professional care at the Redwood Hills Psychiatric Facility, a private institution Vanessa's firm conveniently had connections with. I sat at my kitchen table until dusk, hands trembling. So this was their plan all along. First, pretend concern, then legal paperwork to strip me of power. Finally, lock me away until my fortune was theirs to drain. But they underestimated me. That evening, I called Mira Alvarez, a retired police detective turned private investigator. She'd once helped my neighbor expose a financial scam. When I told her the situation, she didn't sound surprised. Mrs. Hayes, Mira said bluntly, I've seen this before. Adult children file guardianship petitions the moment money lands in a parent's lap. If they win, you'll lose everything. Your freedom, your voice, your bank accounts. I swallowed hard. How do we fight? Simple. We gather evidence. You'll need a real psychiatric evaluation by someone bulletproof in court. And we'll start documenting every conversation, every threat, every look. If they want to play dirty, we'll be ready. For the first time since the phone call, I felt a flicker of strength. They wanted me to be weak. They wanted me to be confused. But I'd survived mining strikes, widowhood, and raising a son alone on pennies. I wasn't about to let two ambitious snakes declare me unfit to live my own life. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was war, and I was ready to fight it in court. The courthouse in Iron Creek smelled faintly of dust and old wood polish. I wore my late husband's navy suit jacket and a string of pearls. Nothing fancy, but enough to say, I am here, and I am not broken. Inside, Caleb and Vanessa sat flanked by their high-powered attorney. Vanessa's smile was all composure, but her eyes glittered with the confidence of someone who thought the game was already won. Caleb wouldn't even meet my gaze. The judge, a stern man named Harold Whittaker, opened the hearing. This is a petition for conservatorship filed by Mr. and Mrs. Hayes against their mother, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. Petitioners claim she is incapable of managing her estate due to cognitive decline. Their first witness was a psychiatrist I'd never met before, Dr. Leonard Pike. He took the stand with oily confidence. "Dr. Pike," Vanessa's lawyer prompted, "what were your findings in your evaluation of Mrs. Hayes?" He cleared his throat. "Clear signs of memory lapses, paranoia about being exploited, and financial confusion. In my professional opinion, she is unfit to handle large sums of money." Vanessa shot me a look of fake pity. Caleb shifted uncomfortably but nodded along. I leaned toward Mira, who sat beside me. "I've never seen that man in my life," I whispered. "Exactly," she muttered back. "Wait for our turn." When it was, my attorney stood. "Objection, Your Honor. We have records showing Dr. Pike never once scheduled an appointment with Mrs. Hayes. No tests, no formal consultation, just a lunch meeting arranged by the petitioners." The courtroom buzzed. Judge Whittaker raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Pike, is this true?" He stammered. "Well, yes, but observation can occur in casual settings." "You diagnosed dementia over appetizers," my lawyer cut in. The gallery broke into nervous laughter. The judge's gavel cracked down. "Order!" Then came our witness, Dr. Rowan Lee, a respected neurologist with 3 decades of spotless reputation. Calm, precise, unshakable. I conducted a full cognitive and psychological evaluation of Mrs. Hayes over 3 hours. Dr. Lee explained, sliding a thick folder onto the bench. "Results show above-average memory recall, excellent financial reasoning, and no evidence of impairment." She looked directly at the judge. "Mrs. Hayes is fully competent." Finally, Mira stepped forward with her evidence. A manila folder full of photographs and emails. "Your Honor, we also uncovered a disturbing pattern. Vanessa Blake has represented multiple elderly clients in guardianship cases. In 3 instances, the clients were declared incompetent and their estates drained within a year. Dr. Pike's name appears in each file." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Judge Whittaker leaned back, studying Caleb and Vanessa with thinly veiled disgust. "I've heard enough. Petition denied. Mrs. Hayes retains full control of her estate. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for possible elder abuse and fraud investigation." The gavel slammed down. Case closed. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Across the aisle, Vanessa's perfect mask cracked, her smile gone. Caleb's face was pale, his jaw tight with panic. They had come to strip me of my freedom. Instead, they had just lit a fuse that would burn straight to their own destruction. 2 days after the hearing, Mira Alvarez showed up at my cabin with a battered leather briefcase. She looked like she hadn't slept, but her eyes were blazing. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, dropping the case on my kitchen table, "your daughter-in-law isn't just greedy, she's dangerous." Inside the briefcase were files, court records, medical reports, even grainy photographs. Mira spread them out like a grim mosaic. "Over the past 5 years," she explained, "Vanessa has been involved in at least 4 guardianship cases. Each time the same pattern. A wealthy elder suddenly declared incompetent, the same psychiatrist, Dr. Pike, provides the evaluation, and within months the estate gets liquidated." I stared at the faces in the photographs, 4 elderly men and women, 2 already deceased, 1 confined to a facility, bills draining their accounts. The 4th, an older woman named Margaret Doyle, had fought back but lost nearly everything before escaping. "She drained them," I whispered. "Millions," Mira confirmed. "Guardian fees, inflated care costs, legal services. It's a machine, Eleanor. Vanessa's been running a scam, and Caleb, willingly or not, is part of it." My stomach churned. So I wasn't just paranoid. Mira leaned forward. "No, you were her next target. The jackpot. A widow with $120 million and no one to defend her, at least that's what she thought." I felt the room tilt, the betrayal heavier than the money itself. My son, my flesh and blood. How much did he know? How much of this did he accept? Mira's voice hardened. We can prove it. Emails between Vanessa and Dr. Pike, bank transfers from care facilities to shell accounts, even text messages where she brags about how easy it is to manage the elderly when they can't say no. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart beat steady. This wasn't just about me anymore. I looked at Mira. What do we do now? She met my gaze, her detective instincts sharp. We set a trap. Get them to admit the plan in their own words, and when they do, we'll have the DA, the press, and the law on our side. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear or anger. I felt resolve. They wanted to lock me away, drug me, and drain me dry. Instead, I was going to expose them, to shine a light so bright their entire scheme burned to ash. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every elder they had already stolen from. The plan was simple, but it required steel nerves. Mira had arranged everything. A hidden recorder pinned inside my blouse, the district attorney's team waiting 2 blocks away, and a signal phrase. If things turned ugly, I was to say, "Would you like more tea?" That evening, I called Caleb. My voice trembled just enough to sound believable. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about what you and Vanessa said about helping me with my finances. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am a little overwhelmed. His tone shifted instantly, bright and eager. Mom, that's wonderful. We'll come by tonight. At exactly 7 p.m., they swept into my cabin carrying wine and flowers as if this were some celebration instead of a takeover. Vanessa's heels clicked against the old wooden floor, her eyes scanning my modest home like a predator sizing up prey. We sat in the living room. I poured them tea, hands steady even as my heart raced. I suppose I should ask. I began softly. What exactly would happen if I couldn't manage things anymore? Vanessa smiled that rehearsed lawyer's smile. You'd be placed under guardianship. Nothing to fear. Caleb and I would oversee everything, your bills, your accounts, your investments. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. I tilted my head. And where would I live? Caleb shifted uncomfortably, but Vanessa didn't miss a beat. There are excellent facilities. Redwood Hills, for example. Private, secure medical staff on site. You'd be very well cared for. My voice stayed calm. And my estate, the money. Handled responsibly, Vanessa said smoothly. It would pay for your care, of course, guardianship fees, medical expenses. You know how it is. Sometimes it all gets used up, but isn't peace of mind worth more than money? Every word dripped onto the recorder like poison. I leaned forward, feigning worry. So you'd control the accounts, sell property, even liquidate assets if you needed to. Exactly, she said, eyes gleaming. It's standard procedure. I let silence hang for a long beat, then looked straight at my son. Caleb, is this really what you want for me? He swallowed. His lips parted, but no words came. Vanessa cut in sharply. It's what's best for you. I smiled faintly. Well then, would you like more tea? At that cue, the front door burst open. Detectives and uniformed officers flooded the room. Vanessa Blake Hayes, Caleb Hayes, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and attempted unlawful commitment. The teacup in Vanessa's hand shattered against the floor. Caleb's face went white. I sat back in my chair, calm at last, as they were cuffed in my living room, the very place they'd planned my downfall. Mom, Caleb cried, panic in his voice. How could you do this to me? I met his eyes, steady and cold. No, son, how could you do this to me? The trial began 6 weeks later in the federal courthouse of Reno. The case had drawn media attention far beyond Iron Creek. Headlines screamed. Wealthy couple tried to institutionalize widow for her fortune. When I stepped into the courtroom, flashbulbs popped. I wasn't just Eleanor Hayes anymore. I was the widow who fought back. The prosecution laid everything bare: the secret petition for conservatorship, the fake evaluation from Dr. Pike, the recordings from my living room where Vanessa herself outlined the plan to lock me away in Redwood Hills, and Mira's evidence of the other elderly victims. One by one, witnesses took the stand. A trembling Mrs. Margaret Doyle described how her house was sold under guardianship without her consent. A forensic accountant traced millions funneled into shell companies tied to Vanessa's law firm. Vanessa tried to keep her mask on, but under cross-examination her composure cracked. When the prosecutor read her own text messages, "Once the conservatorship is approved, we drain the accounts," her face drained of all color. Caleb's defense painted him as a manipulated son, pressured by his ambitious wife. But then came the tape, his voice on record, agreeing to the plan. His shoulders slumped like a man already sentenced. When it was my turn to testify, I walked slowly to the stand, my cane tapping against the marble floor. "Mrs. Hayes," the prosecutor asked, "why did you go to such lengths to fight this?" I looked directly at the jury. "Because if they could do this to me, a woman of sound mind with resources and friends, they could do it to anyone. And most elders don't have the strength or the allies to fight back." A hush fell over the room. Even the judge looked moved. After 3 days of testimony, the verdict was swift, guilty on all counts. Vanessa Blake Hayes, 15 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and elder abuse. Caleb Hayes, 10 years for collusion and attempted unlawful commitment. Dr. Pike, stripped of his medical license, facing separate fraud charges. When the judge read the sentences, Vanessa's face crumpled with fury, but Caleb just stared at me, his eyes full of something I couldn't name, shame, maybe, or the ghost of the boy I once raised. As marshals led them away, I felt no triumph, no gloating, just a strange, quiet sorrow. My son would spend a decade behind bars, but beneath that sorrow was something stronger, relief, because at last justice had spoken. After the trial, Iron Creek Tower no longer felt like a victory. Every polished marble floor, every mirrored window reminded me of Caleb's smirk the night he told me I couldn't even afford a house. Owning the building had been sweet justice, yes, but now it felt poisoned. So one crisp autumn morning, I signed the papers and sold the entire tower. The check was enough to buy 3 towers just like it, but I didn't want more glass and steel. I wanted something lasting. That's how the Hayes Foundation was born, named not for Caleb nor for me, but for my late brother, General Thomas Hayes, the man whose fortune had started all of this. His will had given me money. I would use that money to give others their freedom. The mission was simple: protect seniors from financial abuse and exploitation. We funded legal aid for elders dragged into false conservatorship battles. We built a hotline staffed 24/7 with investigators who knew every dirty trick in the book, and we gave grants to families who wanted to fight back but couldn't afford lawyers. On opening day, I stood before a modest crowd in Reno, a mixture of reporters, volunteers, and the very people we'd vowed to defend. Mira Alvarez stood on one side of me, her arms crossed proudly. Dr. Rowan Lee on the other, dignified as ever. Some people see wealth as a weapon. I told the audience, my voice steady in the microphone. I see it as a shield for those who can't fight alone. Applause rose up, echoing through the hall. For the first time in years, I felt truly light. Later, an elderly man shuffled up to me with tears in his eyes. "They tried to take my farm last year," he whispered. "If your foundation had existed then, maybe I wouldn't have lost it." I pressed his hand gently. "You have us now, and no one will silence you again." That night, as I sat in my cabin with the first donation letters spread across my table, I realized something important. The tower had been Caleb's dream, but this foundation was mine. And unlike the tower, it wasn't built of glass. It was built of purpose. Months melted into years after the trial. Headlines faded, reporters stopped calling, and Iron Creek found new scandals to whisper about. But for me, life took on a slower, steadier rhythm. I sold the little cabin and used a fraction of my inheritance to buy a house by Lake Tahoe, a cedar-framed retreat with wide porches, overlooking blue waters that shimmered like glass at sunrise. For the first time in decades, I woke up to birdsong instead of the rattle of old pipes. Every morning, I brewed coffee in a sunlit kitchen and tended to my vegetable garden. Tomatoes, squash, lavender. My hands had once clutched court papers and evidence files. Now they touched soil and seeds. The Hayes Foundation grew too. Letters poured in from across the country, seniors we'd helped recover stolen pensions, widows who kept their homes, families reunited after bitter legal battles. What had begun as my shield became theirs. As for Caleb, he was 3 years into his 10-year sentence. Occasionally, a letter would arrive from the correctional facility. His handwriting was still the same as when he was a boy, jagged, impatient. "Mom, I think about what I did every night. I wish I could take it back. Vanessa was poison, but I didn't have to drink it. I let greed speak louder than blood. I'm sorry." I would read his letters by the lake, the water reflecting the sky like a mirror. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes I burned with anger. Sometimes I simply folded the paper and tucked it away. Because forgiveness, I had learned, was not a gift to be demanded. It was a seed, and seeds take time to grow. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the lake gold, I whispered into the quiet. "I may never forget, Caleb, but maybe one day I'll forgive." And with that, I let the silence settle around me, not as emptiness, but as peace. By his 4th year behind bars, Caleb's letters changed. At first, they had been excuses, half-baked apologies, or rants about unfair trials. But slowly, the tone softened. "Mom, I've joined the prison library program. I'm tutoring inmates who can't read. Funny, isn't it? You used to make me stay at the kitchen table until I finished my book reports. I hated it back then. Now I see the gift you gave me." Another letter arrived weeks later. "I've been attending counseling. They call it accountability sessions. At first, I rolled my eyes. But last night, I admitted something I never had before. I wanted your money more than I wanted your love. Writing that out broke something in me, or maybe it fixed something." I read those words sitting on my porch, the lake wind cool against my face. My chest ached, not with anger this time, but with something harder to name. Then came the surprise. A phone call from Mira, my ever-watchful ally. "Eleanor," she said, "I thought you should know. Caleb applied for early release programs, not to shorten his sentence. He still has years to go, but to qualify for a rehabilitation track. He wants to earn a degree in social work, says he wants to help prevent elder abuse when he gets out." I nearly dropped the phone. My son, the same boy who'd once plotted to have me locked away, now choosing to fight the very evil he had joined. That night, I walked down to the dock, the moonlight shimmering over the water. I remembered the little boy Caleb had been, chasing fireflies barefoot in the backyard. I remembered the man he'd become, drunk on greed. And now, perhaps, I was seeing the shadow of someone new, someone trying to rise from the ashes. The question was, could I believe it? As I stood there, a letter clutched in my hand, I whispered into the lake's reflection. "Lord, give me the wisdom to know the difference between a con and a true change of heart." Because if Caleb was sincere, the road ahead would not just be his redemption. It might be mine, too. The prison visitation room was a harsh place. Cold concrete walls, fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead, and the sound of guards' boots echoing on the floor. I hadn't been here in years, not since Caleb's sentencing. When he walked in, wearing the faded beige uniform, I almost didn't recognize him. The swagger was gone. His hair had flecks of gray now, his posture weighed down by time. But when his eyes found mine, there was something different, no arrogance, no defiance, just a raw, unguarded look. "Mom," his voice cracked. I sat across the plastic table, folding my hands. "Caleb." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us, the kind that carried 1,000 unspoken words. Finally, he leaned forward. "I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I need you to know I'm not the same man who tried to take everything from you. Prison stripped me down to the bone, and what's left, it's ugly, but it's real." I studied him. The lines on his face, the way his eyes no longer darted with calculation but stayed steady, vulnerable. "You tried to have me declared insane," I said quietly. "You were willing to lock me away like I was nothing." He winced, his hands clenching. "I know, and that thought keeps me awake every night. I hate the man I was, Mom, hate him, but I also know he was me, and I have to carry that weight forever." The guards shifted near the wall, but no one interrupted. I leaned closer, my voice firm. "Words are easy, Caleb. You fooled me once with words. You won't again. Show me. Prove to me you've changed, not for me, not for appearances, for yourself." Tears welled in his eyes, but he didn't look away. "That's what I've been trying to do. The tutoring, the classes, the counseling, it's not about getting out early. It's about becoming someone my son, your grandson, wouldn't be ashamed of." The mention of my grandson, little James, living with his mother far away, stabbed through me. I rose slowly, placing my hand on the cold plexiglass that separated us. He mirrored me, his palm pressing against mine through the barrier. "For now," I said, voice trembling, "this is all I can give you, a chance, not forgiveness. A chance, don't waste it." His shoulders shook, silent sobs breaking free. "I won't, Mom, I swear." When the guard called time, I walked out into the bright Nevada sun, my chest heavy but lighter than it had been in years, because I had seen something in Caleb's eyes I thought was gone forever. Remorse. And maybe, just maybe, the seed of redemption. 10 years pass like the turning of seasons. My hair, once streaked with silver, is now pure white. My steps are slower, my hands stiffer, but my mind, thank God, remains sharp as ever. The Hayes Foundation has grown beyond my imagining. From a modest office in Reno, it has spread to chapters across 6 states. In the last decade, we've recovered over $40 million stolen from seniors, dismantled 6 fraudulent guardianship rings, and trained hundreds of young lawyers to fight for those without a voice. I still live in my lake house, though it's quieter now. My garden is full each summer, and in winter the fire keeps the chill away. Sometimes I walk along the dock, staring at the reflection of the mountains, thinking of the journey that brought me here, and Caleb. He served his full sentence every day of it, but he used that time. He earned a degree in social work, and when he walked out of prison, he didn't ask me for a cent. Instead, he asked for something rarer, a place at the foundation. The board resisted at first. His name carried scandal, and wounds don't heal easily, but I made the call. I told them redemption isn't cheap, it must be earned. And Caleb has been earning it case by case, victim by victim. I watch him now from a distance. Gray at the temples, softer in the eyes. He visits seniors in nursing homes, helps them read contracts, teaches them how to protect their pensions. When an elderly widow squeezes his hand and says, "Thank you, son. I see the man I once hoped he'd become." Will I ever fully forgive him? I don't know. Some scars never fade. But I have learned this. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about planting a future where trust might grow again. Last month, I signed the final papers of my own will. Everything, every house, every account, every share goes to the foundation. Not to Caleb, not to anyone else, because wealth, I've learned, is safest when it belongs to the cause of justice. When my time comes, the foundation will continue. Caleb will have to live not with inheritance, but with the responsibility to prove every day that he is more than his sins. As for me, I've already claimed my real fortune. Not in dollars, not in property, but in dignity, in peace, and in the knowledge that one widow from Iron Creek turned her family's betrayal into a shield for thousands. And that, I think, is wealth no thief can ever steal.